Hi, and welcome to another episode of Simply Midori. I'm Joshua,
And I'm Midori.
and today we're going to discuss trauma and sex life. If you've had trauma, experienced trauma, and now you're married, dating, whatever it is, and you're having sex, how do you navigate your trauma and a healthy sex life?
I thought we were going to talk about faith, friends, family.
we we're still going to talk about those things. You sent me an Instagram post or something, all about trauma and sex. And to this day, our most viewed blog is about sex. So I thought it was worth a little detour to dive in and talk about our sex life as Christians, both being survivors of rape, for all the things, how we do it, how we navigate it.
Very cold outside, very hot.
Oh, perfect. Getting steamy. Well, let's dive in. So, Midori, my lovely wife, mother of my 3 children, survivor of rape. How do you navigate a healthy sex life? Or I guess my first question would be, what do you deem a healthy sex life?
I don't, the first thing that came to mind was like an apple a day keeps the dentist away.
An apple a day keeps the dentist away. Is that your idea of sex?
Yeah, so like a sex a day. Sex a day keeps the devil away.
Sex a day? Is that why you love the quickie?
What?
Is that why you love the quickie? Midori, this one over here is always like, let's have a quickie.
Well, sometimes with 3 children and working and starting a business, you just have time for a quickie.
It's the get it in and get it done.
Yeah, because I believe you talked about um in one episode about how men need a testosterone release.
Yes, I did.
And so like fundamentally I understand that. And sometimes there's not time for like 3 hour sex date. We're going over to what's that one hotel called? We've never been to this hotel, but we've been told about this one hotel.
Oh, I know what you're just, yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember the name, but well, for those of you who are on our email list, we'll send you the link.
Oh,
check it out.
really?
We don't do anything with them. We've never been there, but we've heard people go there to have sex. But anyway, sometimes you don't have time for a sex debate, but I fundamentally understand that my husband needs a testosterone release, and being his wife, I get to help him in that.
Whoa. Okay, so your philosophy for women is sex a day keeps what?
I said sex a day keeps the devil away.
Oh.
Whatever your devil is.
Sex a day keeps the devil away.
So like we talked about before how you don't watch porn anymore, but I would say for like people that are in relationships with a significant other or a spouse,
right?
It's like if you can help your partner not watch porn by
having sex with them.
Yeah, because you said in a previous podcast that men tend to watch porn because they're stressed and they need testosterone release.
Yeah.
So if they're getting it from where they're meant to get it, and I also can see how, like a quickie, since you brought it up, could be like a trigger for some people. That it could be like maybe you feel used or abused or whatever.
Me?
Or just no, I said people.
Oh, I don't think you do. Like the woman?
Yeah, or the man.
I mean, I'm sure there are men out there that fall into that boat or category. However, if we could just speak for generalizations here, I don't think that most men do.
Yeah, I'm not trying to.
Yeah. Okay, so sex
What would you do
today.
if I woke up one day and I was like, I want to be more because you have mine?
What would I do if you woke up one day and said you wanted to be Mark?
Okay, this is a really bad tangent. We'll just stay on focus. So trauma.
Hold on. No, you don't get to do that and then just say let's move on. Our relationship would be over. What do you mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm
That's
not.
the same thing if you woke up and was like, hey, I'm Josie.
Anywho,
So,
don't know where that one came from.
well, I was saying I can't speak as from a man's perspective.
Well, just because you decide to become a man doesn't give you like how a man would think. Like that wouldn't change.
Well, yeah.
Anyways, okay, so you're raped as a kid. I imagine your sexual identity, your sexual thoughts.
Well, not my identity. I think I've always been.
No, not your identity from that standpoint. Your identity, like how you identify with your sexual life. I imagine all of those things have been altered. How you view sex, how you think about sex, because right, sex is such an intimate thing for each and every one of us. So when someone just goes in and violates you and takes it, it alters our thinking about what is, in a sense, the most private thing that we have. So how do you think that? Here we go. What's the joke?
I don't have a joke. But do you ever sit there and think, because I think you ask really good questions. So do you ever sit there when you're studying or reading and ask yourself questions like this?
Absolutely not. I would say when I sit there, I think, wow, that could be a really good question. I should ask Midori this, or I should ask this person this.
Is that why you have that list of questions?
Well, for those of you that don't know me, our boss, our old boss, um, I would have, I think that anytime you're in a room with someone that you respect or admire, you should have things that you're willing to ask them because they're usually willing to share feedback with you, share ideas with you. And I think that most of us don't come up with good questions on the spot.
Yeah, it's probably interesting that that same philosophy can probably be pulled into a marriage or a relationship
100%.
and make the relationship stronger. So, as a man,
Oh.
being framed as a child by a female,
Oh.
how has that altered your sex life?
I see what you did there. You just pivoted and got out of my question.
I didn't get out of it. I'm sitting in it thinking.
Okay. How did
Because I think a man, I think men in, I don't know.
Well, I think that I know that sex for me, you mentioned compartmentalizing. Sex for me just became a compartment.
Because you never got to like choose. Similarly to me, we never got to choose, like, this is going to be the first time I'm having sex.
Right. Yes, it was never a choice. And I think that therefore I never connected sex with love or sex. I never connected sex with anything from the standpoint of
Just like connect.
yes, just to connect. Sex was just
Like
a means. I married a 10-year-old boy with their jokes.
No, I'm a female.
Oh my gosh, babe, what is? Why are you harping on this right now? I'm losing my train of thoughts here. Sex for me, I never made a connection that it was a way to connect with people.
People.
Well, I had sex with other people before you.
Right.
I never made the connection that sex was to connect with any relationship, any woman that I was with. It was simply something that you just did. So I had a physical feeling, and it was, there's a person there. I've been dating this girl for however long. I'm going to go release. So it was never about passion. It was never about anything. It was strictly about me and my performance and my worth and how pleasurable I can make it for her.
So do you think sex is a selfless act or a selfish act?
Do I think that's sex? I think that sex is both.
Being served and serving?
Yes. And I think that, especially as a man, you have to remove your sense of self-worth tied to the performance, because so many of us tie our performance of sex to our value or our worth, which, especially as a married man, you miss out on the God bless you.
Excuse me.
You miss out on the actual connection that sex can bring. Emotionally, spiritually. So, especially in the beginning of our marriage, my whole thought was, I'm going to give her the best sex of her life. And
Oh. I don't know that.
yeah, I'm going to give her the best sex of her life, and she's going to think I'm like a sexual goddess.
Goddess.
Yeah, that's so weird. Oh, I don't. Hey, do you say sexual god?
That's fantastic.
This is blasphemy anyway, so let's just keep going.
The Zeus of sex.
And she's going to think this is awesome type of, and that's right, because I put so much worth in I put so much worth and value in how I performed in sex.
That makes sense. Like you almost had to redeem it.
Yes.
So why do you think sex as a culture is so hard to talk about? Why do you think people avoid it? What I always find is an interesting stat is people don't talk about sex publicly, within their marriage. I would say not a lot, and especially not externally, with friends. You just don't talk about it,
Right.
which is, and not that it needs to be dinner conversation, but in general.
Oh, why not?
Well, yeah, okay. But the stat that's interesting to me is that although it's not talked about or discussed, that the porn statistic is extremely high and it's ever growing at a rapid rate. And we just learned from your friend that human trafficking, locally, so basically selling sex with actual female humans is insanely high and increasing rapidly as well. So it's a weird dichotomy of we don't want to talk about it, where we don't want to talk about it, but it's happening. It's happening. So it's so weird. Yeah, I don't even know how to
broach.
Yeah, broach this topic with anyone because I'm worried to offend somebody, but it's not like you are
Well, I think that if I am trying to give you an answer or an idea about why sex, I think that so many of us equate shame.
Yeah. Or
to sex.
Guilt or.
Well, I would say more shame. And I say shame specifically because shame is the internal beating ourselves up. Where, right, you can release, you can let go of guilt. Shame stays because shame is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that because so many of us have shame about our sex life. We have shame about the porn. We have shame about how many people we've had sex with. We have shame about the thing that we did. We have shame about getting drunk and having sex, right? Sex for so many of us, I believe, was never a true, you are fully know yourself, fully love yourself, fully accept yourself, and you're making a decision to have sex. It's usually, especially in our culture and context, you are young, first party, first boyfriend, first girlfriend, drinking or some type of drugs. You you feel pressure. So it's never a decision from a place of healing or from a place of fullness.
Or like intentionality.
Or yes, intentionality or logic, or it's always just from a place of I need to do this. I have to do this to please this person. I have to do this to get this person to like me. I have to do this to keep this relationship. I have to do this because this is what society tells us. And I believe because of that is it sparks the initial shame and it simply continues.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure yeah, it's interesting.
You have thoughts about that statement?
No, I don't have any thoughts about that statement. Yeah, it's rarely, I'm sure that there's cases where people have sex for the first time and they're intentional about it.
Yes.
And their sex life, I'm sure, is wildly different than those who were sexually abused, those who chose to have sex for the first time under the circumstances that you described.
Right. And I think overall, though, sex in our culture as a whole is just weird. It's considered weird from the standpoint of right. It's sex, politics, money. It's one of the three things that we use to religion. I would add religion in there, and especially now, it's one of the things that we say we don't talk about. And I would say because it's our biggest places of doubt and healing.
Because you're like so vulnerable.
You're so vulnerable that you just don't want to share anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just such a fascinating topic, and everything is like sexualized these days.
Everything is. And that's why I think it doesn't even make sense to not talk about it because everything is sexualized. And we see sex everywhere. So, especially if you're married and you're trying to have just a healthy, functional, normal relationship, it's how do you not talk about sex?
Yeah, you just don't.
Yeah, I guess you don't. So how do we talk about sex?
We don't.
Oh, okay.
I think we just talk about it.
Like it's just not normal.
Which is not.
Like it's just I apologize. It's just normal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we sit down every morning and talk about sex, but I think we talk about it. I think that if there isn't that, I think if we're not having sex, there's usually something internally in our marriage that's going on. Like, I think one time you told me like if I'm not initiating sex with you, it's because I'm not doing like well, or I've done something to like make you angry and I haven't, and I'm not aware of it, or I am aware of it and I haven't done anything about it to take responsibility and like do what I can to bring reconciliation to the marriage. You're not like initiating sex. I always know Joshua's like really stressed out and he's like not pursuing me.
That's interesting. Can you elaborate?
Well, I think when you get like really stressed out about, I don't know, pick a topic, work, money, investments, whatever like the topic is. I think they're like whenever you get extremely stressed out and I then like poke at something else, like, oh, like if Joshua's already stressed about whatever topic, and then I'm like, well, we need hooks hung up in the bathroom, and I actually do this a million times, and that just like coal on his head to make him even more mad, and then he'll pretty much just like pull away emotionally because he's already navigating so much internally that I'm like another factor, which is like I'm double downing in a negative direction because I'm supposed to be encouraging you when you're in those seasons and in those moments. And instead, I'm not only not encouraging you, but I'm discouraging you and I'm criticizing you. So it's like, why would you, as a husband, want to engage in the act of sex and show me love if you're in this dark place and I'm making it worse? So I always am aware that you're in a bad place and I'm not helping you if you're not engaging with me at any level. And especially not like trying to have sex with me.
So let's talk about. I have so many ideas on that as a whole, and I think that.
Maybe we should just as a cocktail hour conversation.
Oh, okay. You made an emphasis on the cock part. However, I I believe that you mentioned sex a day keeps the devil away.
Made an emphasis on the cock part.
Okay, you did. Sex a day keeps the devil away.
Yep.
If I am a woman listening to this, I'm thinking there's no way I can have sex a day. There's no way Midori has sex a day. She has 3 kids, all right? All these things going on. How do you what do you say? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that's like where the quickie concept came to my mind. It's like, no, we don't have sex every single day. But I think I do make a conscious decision that like that's my goal. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think what it triggers in my head is um like it's I'm responsible for this part of the marriage also. Like it's not one-sided. Like it's not just Joshua's responsibility and it's not just my responsibility. It's both of our responsibilities. And I think for males in our marriage, and maybe it's due to my case history, is Joshua's like constantly like wanting to have sex unless he's like mad or upset. What?
I'm just like a horn dog always.
No, but like I think that's like healthy and that's like normal in a marriage. It's like you always are pursuing your wife.
Yeah.
So
You look very nice right now.
thank you. And I think for females it's like it's not for me, it's not like top of mind all the time, every day.
Yeah, I think we talked about this the other day. It's a very small percentage of your thoughts.
Yeah, like it's not just like which again like could be like the due to my trauma, like maybe it should be more of my thoughts. It's a natural rotation of thoughts about it, but it's not right now.
Right.
So for me, it's like that's my goal. That's the day keeps the devil away.
Okay, so what about when you're
And it could be a quickie. Like everyone has like 5 minutes, or it's not like it has to be like 3 hours.
so just anytime, anywhere, if you've got a small window,
Well,
just
it's
go for it.
appropriate, like not just like anywhere, but in appropriate private spaces.
Okay, interesting. So how do you think that as you think about sex, How do you think that trauma has changed your idea or beliefs or opinions about sex?
My ideas. Well, I guess I don't know what my natural ideas of sex would be because my virginity was taken at such a young age that like I never got to experience like what intentional that like first intentional like sex was. So I think I've gotten to so I went into the pattern of like, well, like this is what you do. Like you drink and you party and you have sex and you drink and you party and you have sex and you have a boyfriend and you have sex and like this is just like normal even though like my like I believe from being raised in church like you don't have sex outside of marriage. So there was always this like weird subconscious like undertow or like grounding of me that I was like this like I'm not supposed to be doing this, but this is what you do kind of thing. So like I it was always this battle, but I think once I was raped, I was like, well, cat's out of the bag now. Like it's like
The cat's out of the bag.
like I don't know like what you like I just was like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Like
Right.
the whole like saving yourself for marriage like didn't matter anymore because like it was
It was already done.
it was already done. So I was like, well,
Might as well just.
might as well just do what the world is doing because that's just like what you do. And I feel like such an outcast already now because of this that I'm just gonna do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have um like I lost so much confidence because of that that I probably wasn't like wasn't emotionally or mentally in a space to like charge the hill of like this is what I believe in. So I was like, I'm so defeated from like what had happened that I was like, I should just survive here. So like if this is the easiest route, I'm just gonna take the easiest route.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely would have been for sure different. But I think how it gets brought into your marriage my marriage is like I actually don't know. I feel like by the time we got married, I was fortunate to have like years of counseling
Right.
and therapy and group therapy and I basically had like a reset. Like after I ended my relationship with my ex boyfriend, like I pretty much didn't have sex until we got married.
Do you think though that you brought in ideas or shame or any of those things into marriage with sex as a result of your trauma? Or this is actually my question. Do you think that you brought in a protection or a cover of your full self or your full expression of your sexuality as a result of your trauma into our marriage?
I'm sure, but I don't know.
Well, I ask because
Oh boy.
the I think our sex life has changed and evolved over the course of almost 10 years of marriage.
That's crazy.
And I
It's
look
also
at,
wild that like we've been married for 10 years, but I haven't aged one bit. So wild.
yep, young and youthful, babe.
Just like our kids, like they can't believe we have a 5-year old, but
Yeah, because
not one day, not 1 year on me.
I would just love to understand how your mind works. Like you just choo, 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 all day. Anyways,
Just spaghetti.
just spaghetti. Um, over the course of these 10 years, our sex life has changed so much. And I feel like it's a direct correlation of trust and how you show up in sex. From the standpoint of, I feel like in the beginning of our marriage, sex for you felt like an obligation. Like it didn't really feel like you loved it, which just led me to prove Zeus. Oh my gosh. To prove like I'm a great lover and you're going to love this. So I think that it created
such
a
a
weird
weird
cycle.
yeah, that I probably was super unaware of.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't appreciate your Zeusism.
You didn't appreciate all the new
all your
tricks.
tricks.
Yeah, you just let that go out the window.
Took it for granted.
Yeah.
You were probably thinking, wow, everyone else appreciated these.
I was like,
but how ironic that probably is like much like marriage just in general. Like there's probably certain things in our general marriage that I take for granted that you're like, you should appreciate this.
oh, for sure. Well, right, I think it's inevitable. You compare yourself, you compare your marriages. And I think that when I look at some guys, I'm just like, oh, Midori is lucky.
like the homeless guy.
The homeless guy. Well, I hope my comparison isn't to a homeless guy in marriage. I know
I'm joking. Yeah. I get it. Well, I think it's just yeah. So, what was your initial question?
my mind does not retain that well to come up with that. I think my question now is you're married, you're raped, you have trauma, you are on a journey of healing it.
Oh, the trust.
So how do you navigate exposing your deepest, darkest places and your sex life?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a journey. Exactly like what you said. Like 10 years. I would say our sex life has gotten better over the course of 10 years. Like when you say evolved and changed. I don't know if I know the exact definition of evolution. I just know that things change. So I imagine evolution has something to do with their changing for the positive.
Just
well, regardless,
go for it.
As our sex life has changed over the last 10 years, I believe it's gotten better, and I think that's largely due to like safety. Like there's a safe space in our marriage, and trust is being built, and I think there's just like a true honesty that's being like developed of like who I am individually and while I'm having sex as a sexual being and who we are collectively as like sexual beings. It's like there's just yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's
Because I think, in my opinion, people tend to look at sex and how we see it in like movies or TV shows or in porn. Like it's a very positive, like exciting, like nothing is not happy about like what you see on movies in this like and when people are having sex. And I imagine like when the first time or like when we were having when 10 years ago when we started having sex after we were married, it was probably like I wonder if I had all those like happy feelings all the time or if I was like triggered in any dimension.
I don't think you had happy feelings all the time.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't feel like you have happy feelings now all the time.
Yeah, probably not. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
But I would say like every time we have sex isn't like what you see on movies.
Right.
It's not this like sexcapade that like
It's not like turn off the lights, light a candle,
right
music,
put on outfits. Yeah, it's not like this whole like thing. So I just think the idea of what we've been taught or told to believe sex isn't always a reality of like what sex is in a marriage or even outside of a marriage.
What do you say to people then? Like we've met people that have put sex on the calendar. We've met people that have sex like once a week. We've met people that have sex once a month. We've met people that have right, we had one friend, I think it was like 4 years. Uh and we've had such a wide range of people that we've met that have sex on all these different cadences. What would you say, just broad range, to all of them? Because I feel like most advice or most things tell you one, whatever works best for your marriage is what's best, which I agree with to an extent. And I feel like we have this idea and culture or society of busyness, or I'm tired or I'm exhausted or I'm stressed or I'm fill in the blank, and therefore we will have sex tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And right, we push off sex.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that group?
Yeah.
Really insightful.
Well, back to what I said towards the beginning of this podcast was like sex a day or an apple a day keeps the dentist away. Is like there's basically like healthy eating for your teeth, but there's so much more than just eating an apple that like keeps the dentist away, right? So there's so much more than just having sex once a day that keeps the devil out of your marriage, whether that's by cheating, whether that's porn, whether that's not having sex for long periods of time, whatever that is. It's more like men need sex. So as a wife, it's like you get to figure out like what that will look like in your marriage or in your relationship. I believe for it to be healthy and sustainable.
Right.
Because there's so many other places that men can, or I mean, men and women can get sex.
Well, I felt like as a man that listens to women, I would say, and trying to understand a woman's perspective in so many things. Um, women, it feels like women don't think that sex is a need for man from the standpoint of, um,
Like, do you know that circle? Like, men is over here, woman's over here, and it's like honor, love, or respect, love, respect, not honor. It's like respect and then love. So, like, men need respect to feel love, and women need love to feel loved. And, like, part of respecting a man is like having sex with them. So, for me, it's like this cycle. Like, if I need love and he needs respect, I need love and he needs respect, and that cycle, like, has been really or that circle illustration has been really helpful for me because whenever I'm not feeling loved, it's like, well, where am I showing love? And how men and Joshua receive love, I believe, is from respect. And obviously, there's multiple ways to show respect. And I think one of those ways is fulfilling a need and a desire for men.
yeah. I think that you're unique because when I talk to
Your
other
friends.
husbands,
Yeah.
their wives don't wake up for sex.
Well, I think I'm.
And our whole marriage, you like, no matter how, with maybe like, let's say 15 exceptions,
It's a very small number for 10 years.
It's pretty small. You've like woken up.
It's like 3,650 days.
Yeah. So, like, why? Why do you wake up? Do you think that it stems from the idea? Where do you think that notion comes from? How do you as a woman not do what you said, right? Not romanticize, not need it to be this spectacular moment and still feel loved and valued and like how do you reconcile those things in
Well, I
your
think
head?
there's times where it is like a sexcapade, where like it is like I don't know why I feel like they need to talk about like it's just it's like a lot like a more intentionally set up. And I think there's times where like we have kids or like we are working or there's just so many other excuses. Whatever the excuse is, busy, fill in the blank, that when you wake me up, I'm like, oh, this is something that like he really needs, or this is something that like our marriage needs. So like there's part of the whole it's part of the whole like I trust my husband to lead, and if this is what we need in our marriage, like I can pop right to it. I didn't mean for it to go off out like that, but it did. But I feel like that's what it pretty much is.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it's in the middle of the night, sometimes it is like a quickie, and sometimes it is like a longer thing.
Yeah.
Like your thing is pretty consistent, but like the act of like the sex thing.
Wow, you're really letting loose.
Well, I would do want to be confused.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I think it's all like that trust thing. And I feel like the way I'm talking about this is like it's only for Joshua's pleasure, but it's a mutual pleasure. It's a mutual like I enjoy it. I enjoy having sex with Joshua the same way as Joshua enjoys having sex with me. I think the way I've been talking about it kind of sounds like
Feels like a duty.
yeah, but it's not a duty. It's a privilege.
That's right.
It's
It's a privilege with Zeus. How do you
oh my gosh.
how do you
I can't imagine my sister listens to this podcast. And Michaela.
how do you think about sex when it comes to I'm trying to figure out how to word this.
Yeah.
How do you think about sex when it comes to the wife's duty? I'm speaking of biblically because if you jump online right now, there's so many conversations with right, a woman's body isn't their own. Right, when you become married, there's obligation, right? Submission, all of these words that we toss out from the Bible. How do you view that? How do you rectify? How do you navigate those ideas in your head? Like, do you feel? I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel like sex is a duty? Do you feel like sex is an obligation? Do you feel like you have to have sex? How do you mentally navigate it?
I think in my opinion, from a biblical perspective, the whole idea of like the whole belief system and idea that the wife is a helpmate to her husband, like sex is that for um in the marriage. It's like I can help you by and like being submitted to your like leadership and your in our covenant marriage. So like and that you're going to respect my body as much as I respect my body and help me respect it more if I'm not respecting it the way that it should be. So I think it's all about that trust of like, my body is my own. And if I don't want to have sex, like we don't sometimes. And like there's also a responsibility I carry as a wife to have sex with you. I don't know if I answered that question.
Kind of.
Yeah. And I think it's like an interesting place of like how the world views sex if you're not necessarily a Christian, and how the Christian world views sex in a covenant marriage. Like there's definitely like the whole how do you say it?
Polyamorous.
Yeah, like that whole movement, and or I don't even know.
Right.
It's just it's like there's so many different belief systems out there now.
Yeah.
And so in my opinion,
Well, yeah, there's the A, you can have sex with anyone. B, you don't need to be faithful in a relationship, because especially as the man, right? Men need sex, and there's the Esther Perel idea of right. She wrote the book called Mating in Captivity, which is um all about this idea that familiarity almost ruins sex the more we know each other, because it removes the fantasy, it removes the newness. um and that's we can go on for that. So there's all these ideas about sex, and I feel like they all really pull you away from sex, especially in the context of marriage.
like, and I would even not argue, but like people can probably take what I'm saying of like, I'm your wife, so we get to have sex, and sex a day is like a task. But I would argue that like what you're explaining, but having sex with the same person in a marriage over and over again, like you become more of who you are. So therefore you're always discovering something new. And it becomes a more intimate sex life because you're having sex with the same person over and over again. So that creates a very deep level of intimacy, where what you're explaining, I would argue, is you never actually learn your true self, because there's so many layers to all of us.
Right.
For what, even if you have never ever gone through trauma, or you've always had this perfect life, or whatever the case, whatever extreme that people live on, it's like if you're constantly in the new and you're living up, and you're constantly on like that high, it's like how do you ever, and I'm not, how do you ever
Make it normal.
create a normal, or how do you ever actually have true self-discovery of yourself? Like I believe that we all have those onion peels,
Right.
to a certain degree, and they're constantly like changing, like like your cells are being renewed. It's like they're constantly just like shifting and changing. So yeah, I feel like that's a whole nother
Conversation.
podcast and conversation.
Well, let's bring this home. Toss out a question to take us home.
You're a better questioner.
Don't do that to yourself.
Let's think. Here on my turn. What? Huh. What would you say to the married, I guess, to any male out there that wants to stop watching porn, but feels as if they can't? Whether that is like they are too addicted, they can't do it, or they are married and they don't believe in cheating. They don't want to cheat on their wife, so
They watch porn.
they watch porn instead, but they really desire to have sex with their wife, or they're single and they really want to have sex, but they believe that they're supposed to have sex when they're married. Like,
I got it. If you are a guy that watches porn and want to stop, first off, I would say message me and let's chat, and I can give you tools and resources, and we can create a game plan together to have you stop watching porn first. Secondly, I would say as a broad message to the person, I think that you get to take some strong stances to remove the option of porn. So what I mean is most people don't watch porn at 10 a.m. Right? They watch porn later on in the day or times that they're alone, or times late at night. And so you get to remove those barriers. You remove those barriers with simple things, not having headphones. Because if you don't have headphones, right, typically you don't watch porn. You remove technology from your room, especially late at night. So you don't have options. You have uh, things like Blocker X that you can install in your phone that totally creates a filter. You have Blocker X also allows you to go even further in depth with even putting in like keywords. So if there's things,
so there's like practical technology.
Yeah, there's practical softwares that you can actually put uh, that will block just the idea. And then I think you have to add on basic things like from social media, right? Just hit that not interested when you see this girl in the gym in these tiny shorts. I think you have practically with your eyes, if you are out, most guys will, right, just do the double take. I think you have to start training yourself to protect your eyes from the standpoint of you already have such a condition to go and watch. So I said you have to do this extreme thing because you need to break all of those habits, because everything is really a trigger from the standpoint of this moment, this girl, this video, this etc. Like flips this switch and gets you going.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, one of the greatest things that you can do when you flip that switch, just from a pure baseline, is go open up your Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very hard to watch porn and read your Bible.
Yeah.
Very hard.
That makes sense.
Um,
Well, what about for our listeners that like aren't that are not Christians that are like, oh, that would do nothing for me because I don't have a Bible,
all right.
or
Well,
I don't care what the Bible says, or
right. I think that I would text your mom or call your mom.
my mom specifically.
Not your mom specifically, like that
I
person.
was thinking about that. It's very interesting.
Like I think that we all have things that are what I would
So basically,
say
just create a distraction habit.
100%.
I got it.
You're creating a distraction habit.
Think about your nieces.
Whatever that is, you need to be able to physically do something that distracts. And that's more to just start training your brain of getting out of the habit. And then we have tools. We should put in the show notes that one thing. It's I think we have an article called 9 Easy Ways to Stop Watching Porn. But the whole idea is as you create distractions, you get out of essentially like coming into the room, flipping a switch, which is really kind of what happens when we've gotten to the habit of watching porn. Right? It's like we flip the switch and electricity runs and boom.
I imagine like when men or when you stopped watching porn over 10 years ago now. It's a long time. Uh like it forced you to be a better partner, husband, because you're like the porn sex expectation is just so unrealistic that it normalized your like the chemicals in your brain to be like, oh, like I'm sure like neutralize like I'm sure they're so heightened of like what the expectation of sex is all the time. And it forces you to like internally be like, this is a give and take. Like I don't just get to have it whenever I want it. Like I get to sow into my marriage or I get to sow into my relationship. Like this isn't just a transaction. This is a relationship.
Right. Yeah, I think that what it really forces is intimacy.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard to yell, fight, scream, be angry, whatever it is, and realize, okay, Midori's going to have sex with me after that. Like,
yeah, like you need each other.
Right. And so just from a pure, if I'm going to have sex tonight, there's just practical things that I get to avoid or not do or figure out a better way to communicate.
And I imagine that a quickie is way better than watching porn.
Well, I think that that's part of the fascinating scenario with porn because as you watch more and more porn, you actually get to the point where real life sex isn't as stimulating.
That makes sense.
Because your mind is used to seeing these off the wall things, and so this person that doesn't feel every desire with looks, how they're dressing, right? That person no longer fits your fantasy,
right?
And so therefore, it's almost like you aren't interested.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, especially for just marriages, porn is so detrimental, especially to the male, because you will ruin your wife's visual appeal.
Yeah. I mean, it's an addiction, right? It's like the more you smoke, the more you need cigarettes. The more you do that vape thing, you need more stronger vape.
Right.
Like whatever you put in them.
It is
the more you drink,
100%.
The stronger alcohol you need. The more you watch porn, like the better the porn needs to get, which is why the stats are increasingly growing, which is why human trafficking is growing, which is like why all these things are growing, because they have to in order to keep the addiction alive, you have to feed the addiction with new things.
Yeah.
It's just wild. Anyways, so sex and marriage.
That was a fist bump.
Oh.
That was awkward.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna like.
No, that's just okay. All right.
Well, I don't really know how you end this session, but here is the first session.
I do. Go have sex.
All right.
That's it.
Thanks.